Hey friends, excited to have you all here on our webinar on how to make your B2B brand discoverable in AI search. My name is Viola. I run a business called Flow Agency, where we do digital marketing predominantly for B2B SaaS and professional services companies. And I have a cool panel of presenters and speakers here today. And I'll do a quick round of introduction. We'll hear a lightning talk by Kliment, who is one of the newest additions to our team, and he has been absolutely killing it, figuring out how AI search works and how he can grow visibility for our clients. He recently also got shortlisted for a search award with his application about AI search, and he's been sharing some of his wisdom at our team retreat in Budapest about 2 months ago, so we wanted to make sure that he can share it with the world too. And then we have also here Colleen, who for the last couple of years was our director of SEO. And since recently, she is our director of innovation, meaning that she's helping us build AI services, automations, and new workflows. And then we have Ben here, who has previously worked in-house for a SaaS company and has joined us about 1.5 years ago and is deeply passionate about content and SEO. So we definitely wanted him to contribute here today as well. And if I haven't said it yet, my name is Viola, and I'm super stoked to have you all here today. The way this session is going to go is we're going to have Kliment kick off, providing some input and insight into what he's been studying and what's working today. And then we're going to have the panel discussion, which I'm stoked about, because even preparing for this session, it already got very heated and we barely managed to complete the prep session in the allocated time. So I think it's going to be a fun discussion after. So yeah, please introduce yourself in the chat, and either during Kliment's talk or after, please also put your ideas and questions and concerns into the chat as well. And I think without further ado, Kliment, I think the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Viola, for that wonderful intro. I'm so excited to go through these slides. I've been scrolling through them all morning, and I think we have a beautiful design. So I'm really excited to share and then get into that panel we've been talking about for the past week. So yeah, let's get started. I think this is the way to go. Okay, so yeah, how do we get your B2B brand in AI answers? I'm going to share some secrets today. Viola already introduced me, so I'm not going to be going through this or repeating it again. But yeah, I asked Claude, who am I? Who is Kliment Stamenkov? And I wanted to see what it's going to say about me. It did pick up most of this information off of my LinkedIn, actually, and stuff like my experience, my bio, even my testimonials. He was saying what my colleagues think of me. So thank you, whoever had left me a recommendation. But it also picked up stuff like that I've been a speaker at this conference, which is not true. I actually just reposted that in support of my friend, where it said that I'm a music producer, which I've never done any music. I do very much enjoy music, but I have not produced any. So I had already gone ahead and updated my LinkedIn bio to actually say what I want AI to say. So that's done. But I also wanted to see what it says about Flow Agency. And it did get most of the things right. We do keep a pretty good digital footprint of our agency, but I do also see names like past team members who are no longer with the company and is actually referencing some third-party website. Or one of the sources said that Viola has 10 years of experience, more than a decade of experience. Another said 6, which is not true. So we do have some stuff to take care of here. So yeah, AI can say a lot about your brand, but is it saying the right stuff? That's something that we want to be looking at. And why does this matter? So search is diversifying. Search used to be synonymous with Google. So when someone said search, we meant Google. But in this day and age, there's AI search. People are going to Claude and ChatGPT like I just did. Or there's also social search. Even for B2C, people are going on TikTok and looking up products and reviews and all of that. Or we have communities. I'm part of this AI search leaders community. So I go search for tips and bring news there. We have vertical search with software review sites like G2 and Capterra and all that. So you want to be visible across different discovery touch points, be consistent, and be recommendable. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Some statistics that I wanted to share with you just to show how urgent this is. The B2B buying process is starting with an answer engine conversation instead of a Google search more often than it's not. And a lot of the respondents in this G2 AI Search Insights report said they rely on ChatGPT or like AI chatbots for research at a 71%, which is up from 60% just 7 months ago. And 80% of or 79% of AI search has changed how people do research. A lot of people go to Gen AI chatbots now instead of going to software review sites and vendor sites, especially at the stage of discovery. And if you're working at a B2B company, I'm sure there's been talk about like getting your visibility up or conversions or leads from ChatGPT or from Claude, all these LLMs. Everyone wants to succeed and get referred by AI. That's the point of this webinar. But we got to start at step one. We got to start with the input metrics that we have control of. Like we do not have direct control of getting our link, our homepage link, and then a conversion, let's say in ChatGPT. You got to start with the input metrics. You want to be publishing content. You want to be doing technical optimization on your site, backlinks, and all that. And that's when you can start setting goals for your AI or LLM visibility. You can start measuring, and that includes mentions and citations and so on. And then you can be looking at progress. You can be looking at traffic to lead up to or the ladder up to the conversions. There's also a big challenge here where we cannot correctly attribute all of the traffic or all the leads that are coming in from AI. A lot of times there's consent for cookies, and if you just reject that, it's going to go into direct. Or there's other reasons why it may end up in direct too, like no UTM tags or stuff like that. So with this said, self-attribution is going to play a big role into actually understanding the impact of AI on your conversion and your pipeline. And if your brand is not recommended in AI as search engine results, you're not even being like considered by today's buyer. This research by Omniscient and Winter showed that LLMs are being used considerably more at the research and the stage of defining requirements. So you want to be present at the very, very start of the research process. People are then going to move on to peer recommendations or the website when they're closer to getting internal buy-in or making the final decision. I want to show this example of how it keeps getting better. So at the start of May, ChatGPT actually started linking to homepage or to brand mentions and linking to your homepage. And with this one client, we saw referrals going up like crazy, but not only, this traffic is converting so much better. And SimilarWeb did a bit of a study on this, and they saw that ChatGPT referrals are up by 150%. There's been an uplift in page views or time on site. And how frequently does this happen? 3 out of 5 times when your brand is mentioned, there's a link to the homepage. So we are seeing this impact. Now, how do you get your B2B brand in AI Answers? That's why we're here. That's why we're here. We want to talk about that. So some top secret incoming. We are not going to gatekeep it like the Coca-Cola formula is in this vault. We're going to show you publicly, even though the slides say don't do it. So LLM answers are the average of everything that's been said about you on the or your brand on the internet. As you saw with Flow Agency, everything we've mentioned in the past, this is now an average. So all the content that is put out there, it influences how a brand is perceived by their audience on the different LLMs. And we'll get a bit more technical here and talk about the classic RAG from before to agentic RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So before, AI overviews, for example, embed your query and run a vector search to find the top K passages. It would then generate a response by just stuffing those passages into the context window and draft an answer, and it would just show you inside your page. But as models are upgrading, they're moving on to doing agentic RAG. And there's different stages here. Like first, they start planning. When you put in that query, the model is going to start planning using subqueries, or what you know as query fanout. Then there's a router which is going to pick a different tool. So maybe an MCP, or maybe it's going to do a web search to actually get in more information. And now at this stage, it's going to retrieve the passages, the candidate passages, which was the first step before. And it's going to rank them and re-rank them and pick a winner from them. But before that, it's also going to synthesize the answers and do a critical analysis. Like, is this actually sufficient of an answer? Is it fresh enough? Are there any contradictions? And it may go back. So if your content won before in one of these stages, maybe it'll get ruled out later on. So you do want to make sure that you have enough votes for your content to survive this judging. And that's when you get a citation. And I wanted to quote Mike King here from iPullRank. This is also from him. He said, like, you have to win across many sub-retrievals, not just one, in order to make that final citation. So before it was a lot easier to get a citation. Now it's become much more challenging as models are being upgraded. So you do need to be omnipresent. AI models are using natural language processing, and they piece together a bigger picture of your brand. And that's content like your website, listicles, review sites, social media, all of this. The more you're present across different sources, the higher chances you have of being cited in AI. So 54%, according to Oncorp, there's a higher mention rate for brands with consistent multi-platform presence. And I want to briefly talk about brand entity association too. I have an example from ClickUp because we have a running joke here that I want to get ClickUp as a client at Flow Agency. So I wanted to show this example in case anyone from ClickUp is watching. But when you do run this test, this is from Dan Petrovich. The tool he has is live on his site. And I put in ClickUp there, and I put in the top keywords we want to rank for. And Gemini can see that, or it associates ClickUp with project management software, task collaboration, or like productivity tools, all these entities. And it also associates ClickUp with different brands like Trello, Asana, Monday, and so on. So getting AI to recommend your brand is probably building these associations. If there's a brand on here that's starting to compete with ClickUp, you want to make sure you have that content covered, maybe in a comparison page or so on. Because AI models are associating your brand with others as well as entities. And to win in LLMs and AI search, you want to articulate what your company narrative is, how you position yourself, how you brand yourself, what's the boilerplate you're using. And the next step is to align your assets using this content on your website, on your own content, own listicles, comparisons, all that, and then go on to review sites, social profiles, and so on. And you want to activate other teams too, maybe partners for their partnerships or customer success to get more people to put in reviews on these sites, or go work with your integrations so you can get more content out there and embed this narrative in third-party sources. And lastly, you want to own the industry narrative by doing thought leadership, publishing original research, doing video. That is all feeding into the AEO strategy. So before we close off, I want to share my framework for long-term success. This is what got me the shortlist at the European Search Awards. And you can see it here today. So what I do to get brands into AI answers is I start by recording these answers for my target queries. And then compare a month later, the same queries, what are the AI saying now? And I analyze what changed, like who's getting cited now, who lost, what changed in the response body itself. And I investigate, like I check my current content against what's being cited to figure out how I can optimize and upgrade my content based on what models are valuing today. So a lot of this is done with AI, but you got to have human in the loop, and you want to make sure that the output you're getting is actually valid. And It works. This is proof from a real client project I'm working on, and it's specifically from AI overviews. I managed to get their citations and mentions up, and that's what got us this shortlist. So to wrap up, a few key learnings is AI does like fresh content, but also models updates take place, and competitors are also going to launch their AI search programs. You need a long-term strategy in order to, if you want to stay in these answers. And you want to get your, or like to get your B2B brand in AI search isn't a one and done strategy. You do need to build it for it to be long lasting. We have seen a lot of quick hacks that work today and then traffic graphs the tank tomorrow. So be careful when you're doing an AEO program without thinking about organic visibility. It's just a quick way to get to the SEO grade. And what you should remember from this quick talk, be omnipresent. Don't do just SEO, but think about AI visibility as well and modern approaches, but do not forget SEO. Shortcuts may work today, but you need a long-term strategy. And number 4, AI search rewards fresh content and it shifts constantly. So you do need a system like Compare and Optimize. If you do want to learn more, we are very active on LinkedIn. I myself have been posting over the past week or so, and I'm going to continue doing so. So if you do want to see what we share, you can connect with us, with the Flow Agency team on this screen. I'll leave it up here so you can scan the codes if you want. You can take a picture. But again, you know where to find us. You can just type in our names in LinkedIn too.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kliment, for 15 jam-packed minutes on what is going on in AI search right now. And now for the panel, we basically want to abstract some of the concepts and ideas and see what does that mean for our work. What are we changing in our content and SEO workflows, and how are things different? And so a reminder, we'll have now for the panel, we'll Helene, and Ben will join us as well. And then between the 4 of us, we're trying to sort of like mine our shared experience and us sort of like living and breathing this with clients right now. And so my first question essentially for the panel is that question is like, what do you see working for your clients right now? And I don't mean that in a very abstract sense, because I think Kliment just set the foundation. I mean that very practically. What are you doing on a day-to-day basis that is helping your clients right now?
Boy, that's a surprisingly tough question. Like, and it's sort of like I'm just, what comes to mind is a lot of different things. And I think for me, it does come down to there is no template. This optimizing for AI answers always will work best when it's specifically aligned with your particular situation. Having said that, I think the most impactful thing I'm doing in general across the board with the accounts that we're working on is a product-led content strategy, which feeds into optimized product page templates. And then combining that with off-page management, just bringing like the off-page, offsite, I should specify, your listings on review sites, your social, your inclusion in listicles, all of this. Bringing those, into closer account. And then that's kind of like the broad form of the day-to-day activities that we're working towards and I'm finding success with so far. But you'll probably get different answers from each of us.
I like this a lot. And just for the sake of like clarity, when you say you're making your content strategy very product-led, how is that different, let's say, from a typical SEO strategy, or maybe the things that you did 5 years ago?
So 5 years ago, or I'll stick with the typical SEO strategy.
Yeah.
It's you find, keywords and topics in Ahrefs or Google Search Console that are like vaguely related, So if you're like, if you have software that helps plumbing companies, you publish something like top plumbing tools to use or things like that. That's kind of like this entry level stuff that's not really connected to anything your product does. Instead, product led is you work backwards from the problems that your product solves. You go from the solutions it has, the problems that it solves, and then the way people research the solutions to those problems in their own language. And so that's the kind of like broad strokes is just you're not trying to just throw whatever out there that might be relevant. Everything you publish is directly connected to a problem that your product solves.
I like it. I want to pass the ball to either Helene or Clement, and I'm curious what you see working right now.
I'm just gonna double down and say Ben Ben's activities are definitely what I'm seeing, like myself across clients. I get to sort of get a bird's eye view of all of the clients looking at SEO and AI. And do not underestimate like your product pages being very much aligned with the needs that people want, the prompts that they're asking, especially when you're trying to capture that demand. A very small edit to a product page can significantly boost AI visibility, especially for B2B niche products. Like it's just sometimes a matter of adding in one or two sentences there. That's just clarifying something about your product. And so making sure that is set up correctly and, meets the intent of the user, but then also, yes, aligning your social media, aligning, making sure your G2 says that you're the right category, that you say on your website. And so, yeah, that alignment and just like not thinking, oh my gosh, I need to publish 1,000 pages tomorrow, but just like, let's focus on just that one page, just that one product page and give it a bit of love and seeing a lot of great results like that.
And yeah, I agree with both. And own content is super important. It's definitely still being cited, but when that stopped working and there's no other sources talking about you, I think what's working for clients is being present on sites like Medium or having a really strong set of reviews on G2 or on Gartner. And that's like definitely a second layer of support beyond just having your own content on the site. And you'd be surprised at like how many people actually don't even think about posting on a Medium, but how often that domain is being cited. So that's definitely a good vote to get in your pairwise step of the agentic RAG that I showed.
Absolutely. And I like all of that too. Just to sort of like summarize some of the answers right from the panelists is it might seem obvious, but we see a lot of people who are not optimizing their product solution and industry pages well. And that is really the obvious thing to do, but the thing that a lot of people don't do and that we recommend you to focus on and really dial them in. And sometimes that doesn't even require a big change. Sometimes these are small copy edits, simple optimizations. If you notice that your product page is not made for SEO and AI search at all, I just popped Ben's product page template into the chat. So you can sort of like grab his thinking on how to structure this well. And then to build off what Clement has been saying, obviously your website is only one of the sources an LLM has, and you want to be starting to publish on other sources as well, for example, Medium. There's one question here in the chat that I really appreciate, which is from Felix, and he's asked, which LLMs do you prioritize for the AI visibility? And I like this question a lot because we just talked about search diversifying and how there's so many places in which people now search. And then the question is, what are our top priorities? And then potentially also, how does our approach differ or not?
I can jump in and say this varies depending on a client's goals. I think I'm going to make a really bold assumption. ChatGPT is the largest AI refer that I think I've seen across many websites. But there is a large focus and people wanting to optimize for Claude because of the growing use of Claude. Claude is almost in every company now. And so you definitely, if you're doing B2B sales, you want to show up in Claude. But I think that's a fun challenge. I'm curious to hear if Ben and Clement have had experiences. As an avid Claude user, I don't get a lot of links. And so I think optimizing for that is like a whole new challenge that us SEOs can argue about for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Uh, I slightly did, well, I think that, like, yes, ChatGPT, it drives the most referrals, but I don't know if we can totally say that without the qualification of AI overviews, which is AI traffic, not showing up as AI referral traffic. It's showing up with your organic traffic, right? Because we can't separate AI overview clicks from just like your classic search clicks. But that's the one that is actually probably driving most of your technically AI referral traffic. So that's just like the quick caveat, in my opinion, that you don't want to be like misled in which like model is driving the most visibility when a lot of your AI overview and AI mode traffic is not showing up as such.
Yeah, I can share a controversial take here, and this is advice that's coming from Peak's own CMO, yeah, which we use for AI visibility tracking. He said, don't just focus on optimizing for one platform. You want to be optimizing for AI visibility. And if you see something working well in one platform, you want to see what that is and then just apply that across your strategy. But do not like just focus on one platform because you're probably going to go in a wrong direction.
What I like about that is I think it's also the question is sort of like, what are we measuring? And we'll talk about this a little bit too. And I think often that question around priorities comes from the fact that now we think we can measure so much. And all of a sudden we have measurements, right, for ChatGPT, for Perplexity, and for Claude, and we're struggling to prioritize and make a framework for that. And so if the goal is, let's say, executive communication, I would agree, right? Google and AI overview and AI very much, AI mode very much. That's where most people are. Their vast majority of traffic is coming from. And you probably don't want to have an LLM marketing strategy without Google. And then, yeah, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity is getting very little traction recently, but it also depends a little bit on the type of audience that you have. But I think if you have these sort of big four and you keep inside of almost Google what is driving results. That got us very heated in preparing, which what should we even be measuring? Because we're really in an interesting point in time where a year and a half ago, we basically had no means of measuring. And we got a lot more data over the last year. We now have AI referrals in HubSpot. We have AI referrals in GA4. We'll still have it in Search Console. We have all these LLM visibility tools. And so with more data, I think also came more noise. And I actually think for most teams, we've noticed it led to more confusion. And so, yeah, I'm curious to our panels. What are you looking at on a day-to-day basis? And what are the data points that you actually use to inform your decisions?
Just see our smiles because I feel like we could probably talk about this for an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we're at Flow, we're using Peak. And so we are using this to track some AI, but as Ben said, like we definitely do not want to forget like AI overview is very present. And this is something that's primarily measured through impressions. Search Console says it is coming. I don't know if anyone has seen it inside theirs yet. I haven't seen it, but I can't wait until we get that data from Google. But until then, yeah, I would say impressions, brand mentions, and citations.
Uh, I think, well, for one, the one thing that comes to mind, I want to remember to mention it, is Clement that earlier this week or last week shared that you could actually see the grounding queries that Bing Webmaster that you get from Microsoft's AI products, they show up in your Bing Webmaster Tools, which is hugely, hugely valuable. I just want to throw that out there. We've already been using it in like incorporating into some of our systems, especially for like generating prompt, like good prompts to track for our clients and looking for like gaps in our content versus what's in those grounding queries. But to answer the question a bit more, I'm looking at what Helene said. Like that's kind of like the fundamental basis is like, that's where you're going to see the most impact is like just keep looking at your impressions and those kinds of things because AI overviews and AI mode, it's still like the main driver of traffic. But also AI referral traffic is just so hugely important to understand. It's real data, right? So it's worth, like 100 times any kind of estimated data, right? You want to be really looking at what is actually getting people to click, and you can kind of infer back with the context and everything. You can put together patterns with what types of content are actually getting people on your site. And you'll also find, at least I've found, that content that shows up, like where down the sales journey where people actually request demos and buy the product can be traced back to content that also gets AI referral clicks generally. And beyond that, I would need to be setting up self-attribution in whatever, CRM you're using. You need people to be saying that they first heard of you because what is it, Viola? How many of our direct traffic turn out to be, yeah.
I probably should have this ready, but I shared with the team a month ago or so all of our MQLs and what HubSpot told me where they're coming from. And HubSpot largely thinks our MQLs come from direct or search, both paid search and organic search. But if I break it out and I see what people tell me on our contact form, it says, how did you hear about us? And that's a free text field, not a dropdown. And then people, say where they heard about us. Actually, 25% of our MQLs come from AI search. But HubSpot doesn't tell me that. HubSpot just puts them all under direct. And so if I would not ask them, let's say in the forum or in the sales meeting, I think I would have a wrong understanding as to how people come to Flow.
Yeah, I think a lot of brands they want to get AI visibility, but if you're just looking at referral traffic, if you're just looking at prompt visibility, or if you start looking at these new data we're getting from Bing and from Google Search Console, that's not going to be enough. You definitely want to see the impact on pipeline, and that's what we're seeing. That's where it gets really difficult. And there's been an interesting scenario where this self-attribution kind of form, it was a multiple choice one, and people tend to click on the first one and not even look at it. So the way you set up your self-attribution also really matters. We do a free form text field, so you can type it in. And while you may argue that's going to be a bit more difficult to analyze and process, I would say like we have AI to help out with that now. That's the least of the challenge. So make sure if you're setting up self-attribution, you don't just make the first one Google and people are all going to click there and we're going to be lazy to actually go read through the choices. I think self-attribution with a free form text field is going to be a bit more successful at this. And a tip from, I think it's also coming from the same panel, was to put in a channel on there where you're not present. Maybe TikTok, if you're on TikTok, just to get a measurement of how many inaccuracies you get in people just clicking around on channels they actually didn't come from. That's going to be a good way to measure.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Kliment, because it's also, I think it's important to understand self-reported attribution is not necessarily the truth either, right? If they say I found you on Claude, they might have forgotten that they saw 3 ads in your conference talk 2 years ago. But I guess it tells you what is top of mind for them. and what is it that they think they found you on. And so I think again, it's sort of like directional correct, but it's solving for that measurement error that Kliment showed in his slide deck, where what happens is if people don't click on the link in ChatGPT, but they go to your website directly or they go to Google, right, then they all show in direct and organic. And you cannot claim direct for you. Direct is a channel that encapsulates overall marketing success. Direct goes up or down if there's trade shows, if you go viral, if you have a big ad campaign. So I see some AEO and SEO expert wanting to claim direct traffic for themselves. I think that's very, very dangerous because if other marketing channels are doing well or not doing well, you're all of a sudden in there as well. But that is the unfortunate thing. You're sort of like lumped in with everything else, and you need to find a way to sort of like get out of that. I know we're using prompt tracking and LLM visibility trackers. And I'm sort of like curious if we can talk a little bit about what the data is and isn't, because I think, Ben, you mentioned sort of like fake data versus real data. So I wanted to unpack a little bit what we mean when we say that.
Prompt tracking is like, I don't know. I think it's actually one of the more interesting debates right now that I'm seeing in the SEO, AEO community. Um, is I don't think there's not even a convergence on what kind of prompt is meaningful to track. You get people doing like paragraph long, super hyper specific, basically dumping their whole ICP description in, and then all the way back to just like your classic bottom of funnel terms purely, which I'm more towards that side of the gradient myself. But the fact that there's so much variance shows that we're in very early days in making this meaningful and even like interpreting what these results mean. And I have thoughts on that, but I'll let someone else chime in.
Okay, I'll let someone else chime in. Just one thought that you're saying, but you haven't really said it, so I want to repeat it for the audience. The thing with prompt tracking is also that is not your audience, right? It's us as marketers putting in a prompt and we're saying, please track this prompt for me.
Yes.
So it removes the bias of looking in your own ChatGPT, which knows that you love your website, but it doesn't remove the bias that you as a marketer made a decision about what you think your audience is thinking, and then that's what you're now tracking. So that's sort of like, I think, where what Ben also means with not real data, right? It's not real user data. There's no search console for OpenAI. It's us taking a guess. Kliment and Helene, I'll let you riff on that as well. And then I see Felix also posted, what do you think are the biggest flaws with prompt tracking? And we can sort of maybe lump that into our discussion as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting area, and I think it's very difficult to also determine even how many prompts do you track. I've seen some people say you should be tracking like 1,000 prompts, and I was like, well, what? I mean, B2B SaaS, I'm going to argue no. Maybe if you're doing e-commerce and you're running Amazon, maybe you got 10,000 prompts running. But if you're a B2B SaaS, I don't think that's necessary. But I do think that having like a range of prompts, we were calling them brand protection prompts to make sure that your brand is being reflected properly, your bottom of funnel. Sometimes I also like to maybe put in a few top or middle of funnel just to see, like, are they being pulled in? Is this like, I can also just go and check an AI overview and I see they're getting tons of impressions on those pages. And I'm like, okay, I'm happy. I don't need to waste money on tracking that. It's probably going in. But sometimes, you can just do a range of these prompts. But yeah, if you want to talk into how do you create these prompts? How many prompts do you do? What do they actually mean? Are they accurate? Does it mean that you're actually showing in someone's GPT? That probably needs an entire another session. And I think it's a really, really meaningful conversation to have, because a lot of companies that are selling prompt tracking are telling people this is how you show in AI. And no, that's how you show in a simulated conversation inside a custom AI chatbot. Everyone has their own chatbot that they have on their computer. It knows what they're using. It knows their favorite websites. It knows how they talk. It knows the brands that they know, just like our Google. And so personalization of AI and Google is actually something that's completely left off of the table when it comes to using these prompt trackers. So this is like, you know, doing science in a vacuum and then putting it in the real world. I think this is like the way to think about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very simulated environment, and it's arguable like how well do you simulate that, and that comes from how well do you prompt. And of course, you want to set up your prompt so that you are tracking visibility for what you actually want to be found for. But again, it is all still this one bubble that you and your team are in. And this is as good as it gets when we have zero data from the AI platforms. We have no data from ChatGPT, we have no data from Claude and impressions and clicks and all that. But we're starting to get that from what we see in Bing Webmaster Tools or in Microsoft Clarity. Data from grounding queries can start informing our prompt setup beyond what we just think we want to be found for. So that's super important. But not to do is plaster your brand name all over the prompt because you're going to get 100% visibility. And I've seen brands make this mistake. Because, of course, if you ask ChatGPT or an AI about flow agency, of course, flow agency is going to be mentioned in there. So that's one mistake to avoid. And for sure, you do need a bigger set of prompts if you actually want to get some meaning out of that data you're looking at.
But so to summarize some of the thoughts that we've kind of shared is we do have some meaningful sort of like own data and first party data. So whether you look in HubSpot or you look in GA4, right, you can see your LLM referral traffic, you can see your LLM referral conversions and really have that inform your decisions. We also strongly advocate for starting to collect your own data with self-reported attribution, either in your form or in the sales calls, literally asking people, hey, how did you find us? And then secondly, we're sort of like starting to edge to better data with, for example, Bing's grounding queries, Microsoft Clarity. Google now has a new tab in the Search Console, and there's going to be more there in the future. So we're sort of like edging towards more visibility insights that come directly from the AI and LLM providers, but we're sort of in the early days with that. And in the meantime, us, like many other people, we use these companies like Profound, Peak, etc., to get a sense for what's going on. But it's just important to keep in mind we're not measuring the truth. We're measuring what is directionally happening. And it's also very important that all of these tools, whether that's Peak, whether that's Profound, whether Ahrefs, HubSpot, SEMrush, they all have different math. So if you and another marketer are using two different tools for the same set of prompts, you'll likely have different results. And so also sort of like making sure if you do introduce a measurement like that, we're sort of comparing apples with apples over time.
Yeah.
Going,
I just want,
please.
oh, sorry. I was just going to chime in with like my own sort of like, I don't know, methodology for approaching this is I think, or a useful heuristic that I found is thinking of it less as prompt tracking and more as context tracking. And so you're just if you set the right contexts, if you know the contexts you want to be relevant for, if you distill those down to their kind of like essential level, then and you track that. And so the context being like the types of use cases you want to show up for, the your ICP signals, and things like that. And then you track that. You can see the impact of the work that you do, everything else we were talking about previously with like what Kliment was sharing and all the activities you can do. And when you launch something, you ship something, and you can see the impact, right? You can understand the relationship between the work that you're doing and how you show up. And that's really, really useful data, right? The thing to be careful of is not optimizing for this as an outcome, right? Not saying that like if you set your like vision for the year, like highest visibility and peak, you're not setting yourself up for generating pipeline. You want to be making sure that like everything you're doing goes back to that. So yeah, context tracking and make sure you're somewhere in the line, you're optimizing for real data.
I like this a lot, and I feel like this is a sort of like perfect segue because I want to spend sort of like now a little bit talking again as like, what is it that we're doing to improve the AI visibility? Because I think we started in the beginning of this panel talking about the focus on product pages and being very specific there and making improvements. And the good thing is, again, I put that into the chat, Ben has developed a concept for that. So if people are like, what is my perfect product page? You know, you can go to our website, you can read through that, and you're getting a lot of very good information. But then there's been some comments in the chat because, of course, a website has a lot more pages than just product pages. So if we assume we can make a great product page, what is actually about the rest of our website? And more specifically, there was one question in the chat, for example, is there something like a blog post template for AI citations? Like, how do we think about the rest of the website that is not a product page?
Well, this is fun. Um, I would say it's SEO best practices. I hate to say it, I'm an SEO. I'm just gonna say like optimizing your site so that crawlers can crawl it, people can find it, you're discoverable. I mean, that's the core of what we're doing. That's important. But I actually have been leaning more into very, very niche, almost zero search volume topics, probably for the last year or so. I think it was Ben who actually brought this up recently and was like, yeah, the traffic that's actually getting pages from AI are very random blog posts or very like random ideas. We were talking about this, I think, recently, and it's like, how I would never even guess. It's not ranking in Google. It's not even a page I'm looking at in my reporting, but you'll see that it's getting traffic in AI. And so you can see that like those things that everyone has produced, how to do project management. I don't know, 5 tips for project management. Everyone's produced that. AI is going to answer it in 5 seconds. But if you have something that's more nuanced, that's talking to your ICP, that's like a very specific problem that before SEOs told you do not publish it, I'm actually telling you publish it now. So, but I'm saying that you should employ the SEO best practices with this. So don't just put it up and say, oh, I put 500 words on my blog about this very niche topic. You still need to, have the right headings, have the right title, be optimized, but writing about those topics that before, SEOs were not very keen on. And now I'd say go for it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Clement.
No, yeah, I was gonna say I agree with that, and maybe there isn't a template for the best blog post is gonna go and get cited in every single LLM. Rather, you want to take a step back and think about the topic that you're writing about, and Celine is saying, and what do your real customers or potential customers want to actually hear about? What's the problem they're having? Maybe they're having trouble migrating from one platform or another, or maybe your competitor is too pricey and they're gonna start coming to you. Do you have content to support that? Do you to support them? Do you have content to answer their questions? A blog on that, however you want to format it, as long as you're following those SEO best practices, as Celine was saying, I think your content's gonna, do the right job instead of just like show you vanity metrics in these AI prompt trackers.
Yeah, I completely like my own take on this is that like there's this whole like debate right now. It's like, is AEO just SEO? Is it different? Is it, so I think it's like it is just SEO, but with an AI wrapper. So like that means it's like a lot of the things are similar or exactly the same as optimizing for things in the past because the discoverability engine, the thing that actually surfaces your content and pulls it into context, is using the same mechanisms that search has used for, what, decades now. And that we've been optimizing for that process is SEO, and by extension, it is AEO. So the activities that would help you get found in classic search will help you get found in um, answer engines as well. But with the caveat that there's some nuances there. For one, you're not optimizing for user queries as much anymore. You're optimizing for query fanouts. And that's actually a liberating thing. Optimizing for user queries is people don't know what to search, right? We've been kind of stuck with that. And AI it has a much better understanding about what is useful and relevant to answer this question. So it opens up the door to build on what Helene said. There's things you can publish now that you just wouldn't before. And I think it's a mistake to get too distracted in the perfect SEO template and all of this. If having the right topic, talking about the right thing will take you so much further than worrying about your, heading structure and things like that. And if you really focus on that, and not fall into the opportunity cost of fiddling around with these small technical details, you're going to go a lot farther, ship a lot more. And yeah, to round that out, just ship stuff, see what works. This is how SEO has always worked, right? It's trial and error. You really can't get bogged down into perfecting something when I'm shipping, I'm seeing how it performs, and I'm going back and putting what I learned and then shipping again. Just do that, right?
I love it. I like this a lot. And I want to summarize a few things that have been said here. I think one thing is right? A lot of people used to make decisions based on search volume. And that's really not a great metric anymore to make decisions on. And so this is why we almost ignore it now. And we really try to be focused on a lot more. I think Ben put into the chat, right? The best blog post is one that your ICP wants to read. And this is independent of what, search keyword tools will tell you about search volume or not. And then we also said that essentially, in the end, you want to apply SEO best practices, but that's really more like a checklist. You have your blog post ready and you're like, okay, I optimized my headline 1, I have the keyword in the first paragraph, I put a neat URL structure. This should be just something you do, same like you're brushing your teeth. It shouldn't be something to sort of think about. You're brushing your teeth, you're putting your keyword into the headline 1. The effort, the thinking that you want to spend is on the topic selection. And a lot of you have said things like, pick a topic that your ICP wants to read, pick a topic that is unique, pick a topic that has information gain. And I agree. But also, what am I actually doing tomorrow morning as to find a topic that my ICP wants to read?
Yeah, it's tough. This is the hard part, right?
Exactly.
I have a little, I don't know, this is something I've done that I found really useful for this, is I love case studies. I love, love, love case studies. There's so much information. If you want to talk about a product-led content strategy, start with your case studies and work backwards. Look at there's those, they're full. If you've built them, with any kind of quality, they will be centered around the problems that your product to solve for people. And then I work backwards from there and I distill that down. I use Claude here. Also, I use Notebook LM is a really good one, just to ask it questions about the problem your product's solving. And then you can take that out and do your topic research, right? How are people searching for these solutions to these problems, if they are, right? So that's one thing you can take away.
Yeah, what I would say is talk to your sales team. I think sales can be your best friend in this situation because they're going to know what customers are having trouble with, and then using that into your content strategy is going to be effective. But if you do trust AI enough, also putting in your transcripts from sales calls is going to make that job much easier, and then you can create a more comprehensive content plan rather than just trying to walk this path manually.
And I'm gonna add the hardest one. The hardest one is finding them, finding your audience. Where are they? What newsletters are they reading? I don't know, who are they commenting on TikTok? What threads are they in Reddit? Like finding those areas and stopping there once in a while or setting up something. Claude has, cool tools now that you can track these things and do social listening. But being able to know exactly what are the problems? What are the questions that they're asking the most? What are the things that they're most like, the themes that I see repeating over and over. And so I think this is a very valuable space because it's not easily searchable. A lot of those spaces are either behind maybe a paywall, maybe they're behind subscribing, they're in a Slack channel. You can't just Google that. So it does take a little bit of legwork, but I think you can get a lot of good out of that.
I like
I
it.
think for that,
Oh, Ben.
I was just gonna say on that like note, because it's really is 100% right. This is the most valuable thing you could do. Yeah, it's like find what your audience is already paying attention to, and work from that. And I think like a tool like Spark Toro is probably it's one that we're not like we should probably start using. It's like we don't have it in our stack yet. As if I know Viola is probably like, oh my goodness.
I have an account, my friend.
You share it with us. Come on. But
They
yeah,
have a free tier.
it's becoming more and more and more important for just finding exactly those what's your audience watching, right? Especially I love podcasts too, because the people who run podcasts that your ICP listen to, they are experts in this audience. Their whole business model is centered around understanding the audience, what is important to them, what do they want to hear about. So yeah, if you can find that, you'll have a gold mine of data.
Absolutely. And to put a bow on this is, I actually think this is probably the most interesting use case for AI search. I know what a lot of people want to do is they want to write content, they want to scale content, they want to put out 10 more articles than they used to do before. Maybe they want to put out 10,000 more articles than they used to do before. But I think asking AI to write a blog post for you, I think is actually one of the more boring things if you do it naively. And this type of like audience research and deep research, Ben sent me an analysis yesterday where he downloaded, I think, the transcripts of the last 9 months of Exit 5 podcast and then had it summarized and had Claude tell him what do B2B marketers think about? What do they care about? What are the themes in the podcast? And that is a much more meaningful sort of like AI usage that, again, later you can have AI help you writing it, but telling AI, hey, write me a blog post about B2B marketing, that is like boring. But doing that deep analysis, like, hey, here's a mega famous podcast about B2B marketing. What are the themes and patterns? What do they talk about? That's where it gets really interesting. And this is where you do the hard part of choosing the right topics. And then again, you apply SEO best practices to it. Same like you brush your teeth every night. That's just a checklist that you run through when you have an article go live. All right, 3 minutes left to go. So I think closing remarks. I'm gonna have everyone view as like, what is one thing that you want to give people on their path to AI visibility? A word of encouragement, I guess, in these turbulent time. And maybe Helene, I'm gonna have you go first.
Oh, some goodness. Yeah, don't be afraid. I think what Ben said, like, this is why I came to SEO. I love the idea of being able to improve it every day. Like, there's no cap on how many times you can hit update post. And I think there is something really beautiful about that. And I think we're all learning. So just take everything everyone says with a grain of salt and try it for yourself.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Do not listen. Like nobody's right. Right? Like
We're trying, we're guessing.
we're all looking at different parts of the elephant, right? That classic like metaphor. So yeah, just if you have an intuition, if you're like, like it's just test it, test it, test it, test it. That's the only way you're gonna drive, results beyond the basics.
Love it. Clement, what's your final words?
Yeah, it's time to get creative. Like SEO has been around for so long, but AEO or AI search optimization is now brand new. So you can get creative. You can come up with your own stuff. There's no hundreds of playbooks that are gonna tell you how to get it right, like there is for SEO. So now is the time to actually get creative and don't be afraid and don't be scared, like Helene mentioned, to try new stuff, go on different mediums and channels than just what you're used to from before.
Like it. Hopefully, if you're here for this webinar today, I assume you're passionate. I think otherwise you would have not made it here. And hopefully what you can tell is that we are too. I think many people sort of like painted a little bit of a doom and gloom picture 2 years ago because the things that used to work didn't yield the same results anymore. But as you can tell, I think many of us have taken that as an invitation. We're like, great, a new problem to solve, a new thing to study, a new experiment to run. And I think some of us are more the sort of like crazy professor type, and we're like, this is perfect. This is like so much better than, how it was 2 years ago, because now we have an opportunity to play. And so hopefully that webinar can instill, some of this passion into you, because I think that's probably the main thing to make a difference right now. We'll leave you at that. Of course, there's a lot more to say about this. I'll just point you, shameless self-promotion, point you at our own blog. So if you now have an appetite for wanting to optimize for AI search, there's a lot of great guides on there. There's Ben's product page template guide on there. There's research studies that Helene has done in the past. There's guides on SEO for ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and how these LLMs are different from each other and what they feed their information from. There's guides on, LLM ads and how to launch your ChatGPT ads. And so if you want to study more, if you want to experiment more, please check out the blog. And then otherwise, please say hello on LinkedIn. We are all there. Our posts are from real us. We respond back with like real messages. Don't worry, there's not going to be an AI BDR hunting you down for the next decade. So we would love to hear from you. So please, say hello. And thank you so much for joining the session today and hanging out. This was a lot of fun for us.